Welcome to the Horrifying Obsession channel, a YouTube channel dedicated to recounting true stories from the beautiful country of Vietnam, a place that has gone through 2 wars against France and the United States, earning admiration from the world. Phuc was born in 1990. As a child, he frequently experienced horrifying nightmares, so terrifying and haunting that many nights he couldn't dare to sleep. He often dreamed of a woman leading 2 small children to the gate of his house. They wore white clothes and seemed to have no feet, just floating in the air. The woman would stop at the gate, her lifeless eyes staring straight into the house, while the 2 children would quietly slip through the bars of the iron gate, crossing the dim yard and stopping right at the porch. The children's eyes were always empty, like bottomless pits, with something indescribable inside them. They stood motionless, just staring at Phuc, as if waiting for something. Whenever the nightmare reached its peak, the woman would suddenly vanish, leaving behind a painful scream echoing in his head. Phuc would wake up, drenched in sweat, his heart racing, unable to understand why these dreams kept repeating since he was a child. As he grew older, the nightmares became clearer and more detailed. In later dreams, Phuc began to see himself standing in a vast field of grass, the wind howling through his ears, carrying the musty, rotten smell of the earth. In the distance, a black hole appeared, seemingly sucking everything around it. Phuc heard the mournful cries of a woman echoing from deep within the hole, along with the clinking sound of a shovel scraping against the ground. One time, he saw a bloody scene. The woman in his dream was brutally beaten right in front of the 2 children. The mother's eyes were filled with terror and despair. A strange man wielded a shovel, striking her repeatedly. Blood splattered everywhere, even onto the children who stood there, not moving from their spot. Phuc wanted to scream, but no sound came out. The scream only echoed in his head as a desperate cry for help. This scene kept repeating, like a slow-motion film. The image of the 2 children standing silently amidst this horrifying scene became the focal point of every dream. They just stood there, their empty eyes looking at him, as if he was the only one who could free them. This scene repeated throughout Phuc's childhood, like a reminder of something he couldn't grasp. Each time he woke up, he felt as if his heart was being squeezed, his breath quickening, and sweat soaking his back. Phuc always woke up in fear, and these nightmares gradually became a part of his life. He knew that there was something behind these dreams, something deeper than mere nightmares. But what it was, he couldn't understand. When Phuc turned 15, his dreams not only remained haunting images, but began to offer clearer details about the past. In a recent dream, he found himself in an old house, a place he had never seen in real life. The house was abandoned, but in the dream, he felt familiar with every hidden corner, every door. There, he saw a small figure of himself and his sister, trapped in a dark room. Lynn, the little girl with bright eyes, now in the dream, her eyes had lost their light. She didn't say anything, just looked straight at Phuc, as if to remind him of something very important. This scene made him wake up with an urgent feeling. He had to find out the truth. Phuc decided to go to the police station to report his dreams. Although he knew they might dismiss the story of a teenager, he had no other choice. The police were initially skeptical, thinking that the dreams were just the product of an overly vivid imagination. But Phuc persisted, describing every detail with meticulousness and determination. After much patience and persuasion, he finally found a police officer who trusted his intuition. Inspector Huang, a man who had investigated many complex cases, listened to Phuc's story with seriousness. He knew that missing person cases could be linked to strange clues, and this made him pay attention to the boy's account. Inspector Huang decided to open an investigation based on the details Phuc had provided. He began by searching for records of missing persons from 1996, the time Phuc described in his dream. Through hundreds of files, an old photo finally caught his attention. It was an image of a woman and 2 small children, a 6-year-old boy and a 4-year-old girl. They had mysteriously disappeared one evening and were never found. The photo was identical to what Phuc described from his dream. The woman in the photo was Mrs. Thu, Phuc's mother, and the 2 children were him and his sister. Inspector Huang immediately reopened the case file and began tracking down clues from old witnesses. The investigation initially faced many obstacles. Many witnesses from that time had either passed away or moved away. But a small clue emerged when a man in the village remembered that at that time, a group of strangers had come to the area. They worked in the shadows, and no one knew who they really were. After piecing together the events, Inspector Huang identified a notorious criminal who had operated in the area. He was connected to several unsolved cases of human trafficking and murder. As the investigation progressed, Phuc began to recall more about the past. Memories buried deep in his mind began to resurface. Phuc was born into a farming family in Nam Ding province. His father died in a work accident, leaving the three of them to struggle together. One evening, as the sun was setting, Phuc was playing with his sister by the riverbank, while their mother was tending to the cornfield. By then, everyone in the village had already gone home. Phuc couldn't remember all the details, but he knew that his mother was killed right before his eyes by three strange men. The image of his mother collapsing to the cold ground, blood spilling everywhere, always haunted him in his dreams. He and his sister were dragged away by the strangers into the dimming darkness, the panic and fear causing the memories of that night to become vague, like being obscured by a thick fog. In his nightmares, he often saw Lin, the frail and pale girl, forced to work day and night. Lin would often look at him, her eyes full of a plea for help, but also filled with despair. These images urged Phuc to quickly find his sister. The investigation led them through various localities. Phuc and Inspector Huang met with people who had been involved in human trafficking transactions. They followed every clue, from families who had illegally adopted children to ruthless traffickers. During this process, Phuc gradually realized that it wasn't just him and his sister who were victims. Many other children had also been deceived and sold like commodities. This motivated him even more to bring everything to light and free the other victims. After months of relentless investigation, Phuc and Inspector Huang finally found where his sister was being held. Lin had been beaten so severely that she no longer remembered her name, but Phuc recognized her at first glance. Phuc couldn't hold back his emotions when he saw Lin in such a miserable state. She was frail, pale, her eyes terrified and lifeless, unlike the child he once knew. But deep within those eyes, Phuc recognized something familiar, a faint glimmer of the sister who had once loved him dearly. The police planned a secret rescue operation. Inspector Huang carefully organized the forces, ensuring that everything would go smoothly because any mistake could alert the traffickers and cause them to escape. The place where Lin was held was an abandoned farm in Tai Ninh province, near the Cambodian border, surrounded by dense forests, making it very difficult to reach. The traffickers chose this place because it was remote, with few passersby, ideal for trafficking children without being detected. On a dark night, the police team began to move. They silently surrounded the farm, waiting for the right moment to break in. Phuc stood behind a large tree, staring at the dilapidated house where his sister was held. His heart pounded wildly, fear and tension overwhelming him. He worried that if something went wrong, his sister would disappear forever into the hands of these ruthless people. When everyone was in position, the attack signal was given. The police immediately stormed the farm, capturing the traffickers guarding Lin. Phuc, unable to contain himself, rushed in to find his sister. He ran through dark, filthy rooms where children had been kept like animals. Finally, he found Lin huddled in the corner of a small room filled with straw. "Lin," Phuc shouted, his voice choked with emotion. The little girl looked up, her empty eyes staring at him, as if she didn't understand what was happening. Phuc ran over, hugging his sister tightly, tears streaming down his face. She was silent, unresponsive, but gradually he felt her small body trembling in his arms. "I've come. I've found you," Phuc whispered. The rescue was successful, but Phuc knew this was only the first step in Lin's healing journey. His sister had been both physically and mentally scarred. What she had endured over the years could not simply be forgotten or erased. After the raid, the police arrested several members of the trafficking ring. Through interrogation, many horrifying secrets about the trafficking of children and other illegal activities gradually came to light. This was a complex organization with many branches, operating in various areas, and they had committed many unforgivable crimes. Meanwhile, Phuc and Lin were taken to the police station to complete the procedures and give their testimonies. Although Lin was still in a state of shock and unable to talk much, having her brother by her side seemed to make her feel safer. Phuc was also asked to provide more information about what he remembered from the past. He recounted in detail the dreams, the repeated images in his mind over the years. The investigation team, with Phuc's help, was able to trace the clues to find the murderer who had killed his mother. One of the men captured confessed to his role in the murder and kidnapping. He was the leader of the human trafficking group operating in that area at that time. The cold-blooded man showed no remorse, but that didn't matter to Phuc anymore. The criminal had finally been caught, and justice would be served. After the case was resolved, Phuc and Lin returned to their hometown to start a new life. Their old house had now become a ruin, but to Phuc, it was still the place that held memories of his family and childhood. He decided to repair the house so that the two of them could start their lives anew. But even though justice had been served, Phuc could not forget what had happened. The dreams were still there, but they were no longer frightening. In the dreams, he saw his mother, her face no longer bloody and desperate. Instead, she smiled gently, as if to say that it was all over and that her two children had been saved. Lin, despite having gone through so much, gradually began to recover. She started to open up more, slowly recalling the memories that had been forgotten. Phuc was always by her side, helping her through the nightmares and the pain in her heart. The following months passed more peacefully, but Phuc knew that the healing journey would be long. He was no longer the lost boy trapped in nightmares, but had become a strong brother, ready to protect his sister at any cost. As time passed, Phuc gradually found peace in his life. He and Lin, despite having gone through unimaginable trauma, held each other's hands tightly as they navigated the hardest days. Lin started going back to school, while Phuc worked hard to provide for the two of them. The village where they lived began to welcome them back. The villagers, who had witnessed their family's disappearance years ago, now greeted them with compassion and love. Together, they helped Phuc repair the old house, turning it into a safe and warm place where the siblings could begin their lives anew. Phuc and Lin's lives were no longer haunted by nightmares. The ghosts of the past, though still present somewhere in their minds, no longer had power over their lives. Phuc knew that his mother had found peace, and she would always watch over her two children from afar. Phuc decided to use his story to help other children who had been kidnapped and trafficked like he and his sister. He joined NGOs that support victims of human trafficking. Phuc not only became an inspiration, but also a symbol of strength and perseverance. The wounds in his heart remained, but Phuc knew he was no longer alone. He had found his sister, his family, and had rediscovered himself in the long journey of suffering and tears. The journey to seek justice for his mother and rescue his sister transformed Phuc from a weak boy into a strong man, ready to face any challenge in life. And most importantly, he found his family, not just through blood, but through the bonds of love and sacrifice. Phuc's story is a testament to the power of perseverance and love. Through haunting dreams and the quest for truth, he overcame the darkness of the past to find the light of the present and future. The horrifying dreams finally ended, but they were no longer terrifying reminders. Instead, they became signs of completion, of ending a dark chapter in life to open a new one filled with hope and faith. What do you think about the fate of the mother and her two children, of Lin and Phuc? Leave a comment so we can discuss it together. Thank you for following the story. See you in the next video on the Horrifying Obsession channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe to support us.